Welcome to Toni Talks Humanity Matters. I'm Toni Julian, and I love to delve deep into matters relating to unifying and uplifting people from nutrition to fitness and spirituality so we can all show up in the world using our unique gifts. And today I'm really excited because we have a beautiful soul joining us, my special guest, Veronica Vitale. She's a licensed marriage and family therapist with an active private practice in the San Francisco Bay Area, San Jose specifically. She is also a spiritual advisor and the author, writing internationally for meditational journals, radio programs, and magazines. She honors all cultures, ages, and spiritualities in her work. Veronica specializes in helping clients heal from PTSD, anxiety, depression, communication problems, relationship issues, individuals dealing with difficult medical diagnosis, and works to help each client find their centered, higher selves, empowering them to develop their own intuition. Fantastic. Welcome, Veronica.
Nice to be with you. Thank you for having me.
Thank you. So today I'm very excited because we're going to talk about a topic that I mentioned to you before that has just been like near and dear to my heart for at least over a year. And especially as our society has been going through so many changes in the last few years. And that is of desegregating humanity, or being able to, the flip side of that is pulling everybody together around a common purpose and a common feeling and a common acceptance of everyone. And so I know it's a really big topic, but I thought it would be such a great place to start because of your background. And so what I'd love to do is talk about divisiveness and also all the different aspects in our society that we see it, and then kind of later in the program go into what we can do to help turn this around. And I want to start with more about your background, though, how you came to do what you do and what types of situations are you currently helping people get through?
Well, thank you. Relating to division, I think the interesting thing about my background is I worked for many years with perpetrators of domestic violence. They would go to jail or prison. And then when they were released, the judge often ordered them to a 52-week program to understand what they did and to have this, it's a type of therapy, but it's in the group. And I worked with many criminals and helped them understand what happened that led them into a destructive path that made them violent and hurt oftentimes loved ones. And at the same time I did that, I was doing that at nighttime. During the day, I'd get up really early and I'd go over to a local school and do violence prevention with puppets, a program called Second Step. And both groups knew I was working on both groups. So the kids knew I was working with criminals at night, and the criminals knew I was working with children during the day. And a lot of the people that I met that were in my 52-week program were actually really good people. They had stumbled into divisiveness. They had stumbled into having lack of empathy and lack of respect, and developed belief systems that they didn't even know about that embraced power and control and negativity. So when they found out, I mean, as they went through the program, at first they're defensive. They should never have been arrested. Everything was against them. Their partner just happened to walk into the box that they were holding when they were walking down the stairs or whatever, and that's how they ended up in jail. But about 16 weeks into it, they started to realize what happened, the conditioning that they had been through and the belief systems that grew in them, that grew that type of divisive mentality. So they asked me if I could bring the puppets. They asked me if even these big guys with tattoos all over and piercings and scary, Veronica, can you bring the puppy and the snail? Because I never learned from my family of origin and my environment how to prevent this. And if I would have had this program when I was little, I wouldn't be here today. So that's kind of two perspectives, showing how division can erupt and showing how division can start to heal.
Well, that's such a beautiful thing that you've done, because you were really approaching it from both ends, the prevention and the cure, right? So really, really doing that. And that must have been touching, seeing these, big hardened people that have just got, I think also these things happen slowly, right? It's like maybe
Mhm.
you're raised into it, maybe you just become accustomed to it little by little, it becomes your normal. And so
Right.
some people don't even realize until they're out of that environment and in this immersion. I mean, really to become immersed in it and
Yeah.
change the way they're thinking, change their thoughts, change how they look to other people and respect them or not.
Hmm. Hmm. Exactly.
It's, yes. So this 52-week program, was it something that you met with them once a week or, because that's a long time to,
Once a week.
yes.
And oftentimes, sadly, to think about, but oftentimes one 52-week program wasn't enough. They would finish the 52-week program and within 4 months, maybe reoffend, go back to jail and or prison, then be released and have to go through a second 52-week program. And usually that would do the trick. But for a lot of the people who went through, one time was enough. But I think one thing that I saw that actually brought a change of feelings for me when I first started teaching that class, it was a little frightening, right? You're alone.
Intimidating, sure.
Anything could happen, but they knew I had a direct connection to the judge that was working on their case. So they all knew if anything happened to me, that's going to be really bad for them. And I had all the police reports on my lap. So if they're telling me how it didn't really happen that way, they don't know I'm holding the police report, seeing everything that they did. So anyway, I started out with feelings of kind of fear, being very careful. You have to build rapport with them in a completely different way than you build rapport with children, for example. But as they went through the program and as we all worked together, we used the Duluth model, which I really, really support still. It gets into the inner belief systems that you might not even know that you have. They started to see, as I said before, they started to see where they went wrong and how many years of conditioning led them to be on the path that they ended up. And you could see in many of them, you can see the sadness kind of spreading across their face. And I had empathy for them. If we could have intervened in their schools when they were little, they wouldn't be here. I didn't feel sorry for them. I shouldn't say that I felt sorry for it. I had empathy for them. And anyway, not a not the kind of empathy that you would display like with your friends and neighbors. The empathy that you have as a therapist, you project still kind of a formality to kind of keep the boundary in place because they've taken many trips down the wrong road, But so anyway, I
Right.
went from fear, a little bit fear and caution, to feeling comfortable with them, and a lot of them turned out to be really good citizens. A lot of them never reoffended.
I think so many people have that goodness in their hearts, right? But they maybe have shut that off or just poor role models or opportunities or peer pressure. So many things that can take us off track as far as being grounded and centered and doing the right thing. And that anger drives us to do a lot of things, feeling that entitlement, like somebody did
Yeah.
us wrong, and revenge. We see spitefulness and revengefulness in people as well. I'm wondering if
Mhm.
you could go into some situations in our society now where we do see divisiveness, some examples. I'm thinking about social media. I'm thinking about, boy, there are just so many different ways. Can you give us some examples so as we're talking, we can think about the specifics and how it relates to our lives?
Sure. So I don't mean this as a joke, but wherever there are two people, there's a potential for great division. That's a little bit of the state of humanity. So that's just to start with. You could be a really wonderful person, and before you know it, you're mad at someone in your family and saying something that you shouldn't be saying, or vice versa. And then, of course, a lot of your viewers probably think that we're going to be talking about politics today because that's been such a huge problem for people on all sides. And we're going to include that, but not just politics. So it can come from politics, it can come from religion, it comes from cultures, it comes from ages. There's something called ageism, that people are actually pretty prejudiced against people who are older. So it can come in
Right.
many different forms,
Mm-hmm.
and
Mm-hmm.
I think one of the things that leads into it, if that's okay if I start to mention that,
Let's do.
is
Mm-hmm.
it comes from a primitive part of our brain. Back in archaic times, when we were with our group, a hormone was released in our brain called oxytocin. that made us feel rewarded. So our brain liked to be with our group. And then just the opposite of that in archaic time, primitive times, when people from another group would come in, that would be fearful for people in those times. And their amygdala would go off. That's your fear-based part of your brain. Some people say that you could call that going limbic or something. And that's right where the fight or flight part of our brain is.
Mm-hmm.
And it's instantaneous. So back in archaic times, we had the oxytocin release for our group and the amygdala reaction for people who weren't our group. Flash forward to 2021, we have that same primitive brain reaction today, and we don't know we're having it. When we're with our group, we can have an oxytocin release, making us feel good. When we're seeing someone different than us or something that we're not familiar with or something that we thought someone else was distrustful of, we can have the amygdala reaction without using a lot of common sense. And we could take the ball and run with it. So you can see how division, people don't know that's happening. They think they're mad at Republicans or Democrats. They think they're mad at this religion or that religion. They don't know they're having this brain release. And the brain release it's good because we do need to be afraid and be able to go into fight or flight if we're around people who are dangerous, who are going to cause harm. And it is good that we have an oxytocin release because it helps us bond with our family. It gives us reward. But we're talking today about where it can go wrong. And for example, the oxytocin release is really just temporary, because how many times do we say, oh, I'm with my group, I'm with my family, we're happy. And within the hour, everyone in your family's mad at each other.
Well, it's kind of like, you buy something, it makes you feel good for a short time. But it's like, why did I buy that?
Yeah.
It's a kind of that reward, but it is very much back to our survival instincts. And I relate that to nutrition and how, it's our body holds on to our fat stores because of survival, right? And so much of it is the way our brain works and the way the adrenaline kicks in. And then when the adrenaline kicks in those fearful situations, we don't slow down, we don't think, we just act. And that gets us into trouble too, doesn't it?
Absolutely. It leads us into wars. As we go through today, I don't know if we'll have a time to do kind of an assessment of it, but the things that we're going to talk about today that lead into division with individuals and small groups and large groups are actually part of what leadership in the world go through that cause wars. The leadership have all these things going on, so they'll send a couple 100,000 people over to another country to fight because they haven't been able to learn how to not be divided. More coming on that.
Absolutely. So this brain response is so interesting. And, we were talking a little bit about there's us and then there's them. What actually happens with that? Is it, do people have trouble with empathy? Do they not see the other person as a human being? Like, what are some of those things that go on internally, the kind of that thought process that goes with that?
Exactly. Well, if we take the ball and run with it, as I said before, and we just go all with the oxytocin and that these are our people, and we go all with the amygdala and we just keep it that way, and we have no awareness of what's going on, it could really lead us into starting to see the other group as not as good as we are. We could actually start to look down on them. And one of the first thing that goes is empathy. We don't care if some of their individuals or them as a group is having a problem. How many times have you heard people say that, like, good, I'm glad that happened to them. I'm glad that such and such got hit by the car because da. And the nicest people can say the cruelest things. Mm-hmm. So yes, empathy is one of the first things to go. And if you keep riding on that and let the lack of empathy grow in you, that can turn into dehumanization. Then we could start to look at other people and other groups as not even human. And I'll just use a real obvious example. That would be like gangs. If you see a member, if you're in a gang and you see a member of another gang, that's immediately amygdala reaction, right? Plus it's learned behavior that those are our enemy. We have no empathy. If a gang member's mother dies, we could care less. And then it definitely goes into dehumanization. And when we're in that state of dehumanizing other people, that's when violence kicks in. It kind of can kick in before that, but that's when we don't care if we've killed someone.
That gets, that derails pretty quickly, doesn't it?
It
In
does.
those types of
If we don't have
situations.
awareness. Yeah, if we don't have awareness, which is something that we'll talk about a little later, is having the awareness and what to do to stop these things. You know, it's really going to be refreshing, I think, for your listeners, viewers, to know that we do have the power to change this. People change all the time. Groups change all the time. A lot of people that thought that they were against this group over here found out by getting to know them that they weren't evil to begin with. And it was actually fun to get to know them. And it's actually wonderful to get to know what they eat. Where did they come from? What do they believe? We don't have to take that like, oh, they don't believe like us. We can say, that's really interesting.
Yeah, I had to do that, and talk about politics a little bit, just touching on it, not going into right or wrong or the two sides.
Yeah.
But there were so many situations where someone would have an opinion and it was very different from my opinion. And so instead of going to that place, I just like, okay, it starts in my heart, right? It's got to start in my heart, that acceptance. I just said, so, tell me more about why you feel that way and why do you feel like that's going to happen? All right. And how do you feel about this? And, it turned out that none of the things that that person was saying were really based on fact at all. But I wasn't there to judge that. It was just
Mhm,
more like, okay, I respect this person's opinions. I respect the
mhm,
differences. Who am I to say what's right or wrong? I mean, I have my own sense of right and wrong for sure, which is a
mhm,
different thing. But when it comes to situations that are charged, emotionally charged, like
mhm.
politics, that
Yeah.
really brought a lot of divisiveness between people, didn't it?
Oh, absolutely. So I want to commend you on something. You have an inner belief system that supports that even if you're with someone who is different than you and who believes differently than you, you're always going to respect their humanity. You're always going to respect them as a soul. And nothing they're going to say is going to cause you to lose empathy for them or dehumanize them. That's coming from you, Toni, and that's beautiful.
Thank you. That's a
Yeah.
huge compliment. And it's something that I can't say I was ever really aware of, but I remember just this funny little story. I was in high school and I was actually junior high school, Morgan Hill, tiny little town, just cowboys and, like, it was just like, it was so basic and it was a very small school. And I remember there was this one boy and, we were probably, I don't know, 11 years old or something like that, and no one would talk with him. And they were afraid of him because he was
Mhm,
different. He had some mental
mhm,
challenges. He was much younger
mhm.
emotionally than he was in age. And so and he had a
Mhm,
weight problem and he had
mhm.
acne and it was
Oh,
just like
poor
people would
guy.
tease him. Kids were
Yeah.
very unkind. So here's another type of divisiveness, right? People were really, really unkind to him and he would eat strange food. And I just remember one time I went up to talk with him and people were so surprised that I did that. And he asked if I wanted to share his sandwich. His name it was Randy. He asked me if I wanted to share his sandwich, and I remember it
Oh,
was tuna and mustard and something weird at the
tuna and
time.
mustard?
Tuna and mustard, and I'm like, oh, thank you, Randy, but no,
Oh,
I'm fine.
what a
But
universal
yes, it was. But what was really lovely about it is that it taught me, especially when people started giving me feedback. Oh, Toni, I didn't realize that, boy, you're nice to him. No one else is nice to him. They started realizing my behavior as being kind and being
Mhm,
accepting. And I
mhm,
thought, and that reinforced when somebody mentioned that to me at that young age, that reinforced, oh, that's a really good thing. I need to keep doing
mhm.
that. But
Yeah.
it just raised my
Oh,
awareness,
yeah.
around it.
Oh, that's a lovely story. I
Yeah.
mean, that's one of the most violent places on the planet are elementary schools.
I know. Do you know how much gum was stuck in this hair as a
Oh,
kid? I
I've
grew
got you
up.
beat. I
Oh.
had I had braces, uh, and I remember someone walked by me when I was laughing, and their sweater got hooked up on my.
Oh no. Yeah. Oh, we
So I
had
had
so
my
many,
amends. Uh,
so many boo-boos from elementary school, don't we?
yeah, yeah.
I think
I
we all
have a
have
really
them. Hmm.
a story that kind of piggybacks on your story is when I was working at this school in San Jose and working on teaching them impulse control and empathy and using the puppets and stuff. I was watching this little boy, I think he was only in first grade, and he had this turban on, beautiful little boy. And another little child went up and said, "Where are you from?" And he thought for a minute and then he went, "I'm an American."
How cute.
I just love kids.
I'm an American.
He did the whole hand thing. It was just really beautiful.
That's
I'll never forget
adorable.
him. I wonder where he is now. He's probably just as happy to be an American now and being a really wonderful citizen here.
Oh,
Yeah.
I'm sure. I'm sure.
Yeah.
And hopefully feels included as he should be.
Mhm.
Yeah. So we talked about social media a little bit. Are there any other types of scenarios that you think people can relate to around this?
Um, well, probably let's talk about social media for a minute. Do you mind? Because
Let's
maybe
do.
there's a
Yes.
little bit more we can say.
Yeah, that's important, I think, because so many,
Yeah.
especially right now, just to interject, so many people are isolated. They're at home.
Mhm. Yeah.
We're a year into COVID. We still have a little ways to go making progress.
Mm-hmm.
But for some people, and I know many of them, that some women that live alone, some men that live alone,
Mm-hmm.
isolated, can't see their children.
Yeah.
So social media, people are, I think, more sensitive right now
Mhm.
and more isolated. So when somebody says something, they don't realize that their words have power.
Absolutely. And especially after the last years we've been through with both sides politically, because that's a very big thing on social media right now. So I just wanted to let you know that when someone is posting something, for example, on Facebook, let's say, and if they're in their limbic mode, their amygdala is going off, they're all upset about something. So the first thing they do is go post something horrendous. When we're around people who are limbic, we get limbic. Our amygdala, it's a brain reaction, even if we're seeing it in writing.
Hmm,
So when we
right.
read these kind of posts, it smacks us in the face if it's not our group posting, if it's not about, or if it's against our group, right? And that goes for both sides. So when people post, we have to be aware that when you log on and you think you're just going to scroll through and see whose birthday it is today, and all these other horrendous things come up, that we have to know that we have been hit by that. Yeah, it's almost like you're getting slimed by it. And if you read something that's against your group, so to speak, you have a limbic response that you want to go get them. You're going to show them. And if we're not aware of that, we will. And how many Facebook posts have there been about people arguing over politics? It's mostly politics right now. I mean, at least for my, Facebook friends and whatnot, I don't see arguments about religion. There's definitely problems with governments. But I just want people to have awareness that when you see something like that sets your hair on fire, go take a break, go outside, do some deep breathing, tell yourself you just went in fight or flight mode. Validate your own feelings, by the way. We don't want to ignore them. You say to yourself, okay, that made me really angry. This person's always posting things that's very insulting. When I calm down, I'm going to decide what I want to do on that. Do I need to keep them as a friend but not follow them anymore? Maybe I need to take a break for a week or two on that.
And I've
Uh,
seen people do that, take breaks. And
yeah,
good for you. Come back when you calm down.
yeah, exactly.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
So bottom line is, if they're limbic, we can go limbic, and we can be just as obnoxious in how we respond to those things. And then just even the energy of that is horrible energy. It's almost like being, landing on a porcupine or something like that. And it can ruin your day. And for some people, it can ruin their week, and there's been lots of relationships that are lost. And then we stumble onto the same thing again. Now there's no empathy. We're mad at that person. Now we don't care if their mom died because they said this about our group, and we can go on, and there goes division again. So impulse control on our part. Just because someone else went limbic doesn't mean that we have the right to retaliate.
Absolutely. And I have just seen so many times where I might want to respond to something and I will respond in a good way, but then I'll say, well, you know what, let me just think on that. And then something more amazing comes to me. And it's not
Mhm.
even like it's my first response wasn't a positive response, but something, if you just give yourself a little bit of time, my
Mhm.
body's getting all goosebumpy right now. That happens when I'm feeling like I'm on some like real deep truth for me,
Yeah.
is that something even better will come, some
Mhm.
creative idea for them, something that
Mhm.
is meant to be said to them that maybe I wasn't tapping into before. So sometimes I'll just stop and wait, like, you know, is that really a thoughtful response? If it's something
Mhm.
easy, yes, but sometimes there's something so much deeper and so much more
Mhm.
helpful and so much more supportive without judging. And you know, just to give ourselves time for that to come into us, that
Yeah.
creativity or that intuition or whatever people want to call it, to share that. And just
Mhm.
to me, that is just such a great way to not only not go into that fight or flight reaction, but to turn it, to transmute it and make it into something way better than it even could have been. Does that
Mhm.
make sense?
Absolutely. And they will feel, even if it's a written form, but especially if you're speaking with each other, they will feel that, and they might not be consciously aware of it, but that you did not go limbic. They will feel that you found your centered, authentic self. Some people call that higher self. And that will help them relax. Because when we're in our centered higher self, our calm self, that spreads just as much as the going limbic kind of energy. So you knew that you can change your energy. You slowed down the process. You became very mindful. Then you drew on your experience. Like you probably had times that you slipped into fights with people. We all have, and that taught us, well, that didn't get us very well. We just made the problem bigger by retaliating and fighting and, back and forth. So those kind of experiences are actually kind of good if we're willing to learn, like, okay, now we know that didn't work, that made the problem bigger. I'm going to slow down, get into my centered self, and I'm going to bring in good energy. I'm going to bring in humbleness. I'm going to bring in respect. Yeah, we can't
That's a
do
big
this with
one.
everybody. I should
Hmm.
probably put a little commercial break in here that you and I are talking about not being divided. Again, if someone's really dangerous, we're not going to go talk to them and try to not be divided with them. Or if someone in your presence is really thoroughly limbic, sometimes the best thing to do is just back away until they can calm down. And then you have the opportunity to ask yourself, should I ever talk to them about what just happened? Or should I just kind of let that spin around their head? Does that make sense? So
Yeah.
not everybody has the potential for a kind conversation with us. And even when they calm down, some people aren't.
Right.
Yeah, you and I are on our way one by one to help people to overcome that so that we don't have individuals or groups that develop into those bad habits of division mentality. It's almost like an addiction.
Right. People do get addicted to their emotions, and they'll. I was reading a book. It's by Joe Dispenza called "Becoming Supernatural," and he's talking about how these emotions are actually the result of chemical releases in our brains. There's serotonin and all these other
Mhm.
chemicals, and that these emotions that we get addicted to these emotions, and our bodies want to produce these particular chemicals over and over again,
Mhm.
and it's like that sense of familiar, and I
Right.
think we do get addicted to that. So for
Yeah.
I think that it's such a an incremental process, like
Mhm.
anything, learning how to do this. It's not, I don't think someone wakes up one morning and says, oh, I'm going to be, I'm not going to buy into this fight or flight thing. They'll just, be aware of it, catch it when
Mhm.
it happens. Say, okay, I could have
Mhm.
handled that better. I'm going to learn from that. But it takes so
Mhm.
much too. It takes so much humility, like you were saying, and humbleness to really look at yourself honestly and say, you know what, I could have done better with that, right?
Yeah.
Without beating ourselves up. I think we need to be loving
Right.
and kind to ourselves
Yeah.
too. But I think it
Mhm.
is, for me anyway, I can't speak about other people, but it's such an incremental growth, emotional growth process, I guess is the way I can
Yeah,
put
yeah.
it for
Well
myself
said.
anyway. Yeah.
No, that's well said. And back to people who are limbic, which is all of us at times. a lot of times, like what leads people into being divided? What leads people into, like, for example, posting all day long horrible political things about another group? When you look at it, a lot of times these people can have an emotional problem or a huge lack of security. It's possible that they got thrown off their center or their authentic self because maybe they didn't have role modeling how to find it to begin with. There's people who can have anxiety and depression. A lot of those are not divisive people, but sometimes having untreated anxiety or untreated depression could throw us off, and our vantage point can be off then. And so when we see people posting like this, rather than meeting them where they're at and posting right back to them, we don't want to slip into that. And that's where maybe some empathy can come in. Like sometimes you'll meet someone who, well, there's someone that I knew in another neighborhood. I'm not going to mention any names.
I might
And
know them.
yeah, she was cruel all the time. Anytime there was a neighborhood gathering, she would actually show up and start bawling people out, screaming, and the neighbors were angry at her. I mean, she'd even yell at Girl Scouts that knocked on her door, so all the moms learned, don't go to that door. So we've got huge division. What is the root of that? Well, I don't know exactly because she's not my client. I haven't taken a history on her. And that would be the fair thing to do, but I'm not going to do that. But it's probably that, like the little boy that you went and visited with, this person started down a path of something in their environment hurt them. It hurt, layered upon hurt, and fear involved, huge defense mechanism. And when we get wounded like that, a part conformed. It's a defense mechanism that's a very angry part. Because if you keep being angry at people, now you're not going to get hurt wherever that originated from. So I look at her, I mean, it's really hard to not yell back when she's screaming at kids, and you just don't want to buy into it. And she hasn't done that for a while, but people were afraid of her and people were disgusted by her and angry. And I totally understand all those emotions. I felt them too. But at the same time, I looked at her and I thought, I still don't want her to get by what she's doing. We still have to protect innocence. But at the same time, what created that in her, and how can we stop that from other little girls that are growing up now that could turn out the same way? Is there any way that we can bring respect to this child who's maybe being abused at home that started that whole process of that cruelty? Because that's not necessarily our natural way of being, is being cruel. It's actually exhausting. If you woke up every day and you said, I'm going to be really cruel and mean to people all day, it's really exhausting to be, because it's not your centered self. It's a defense mechanism, and it takes a lot of energy. It's like the sci-fi movies that they have to put a lot of energy in the shields.
Right.
It's exhausting.
For any of those Trekkie fans out there, I know exactly what you're talking
exactly.
about.
So it's a little hard to have empathy with someone who's that far gone, but that is the kernel of the problem. And once in a while, those people can even turn around. Like if they start their defense mechanisms by screaming at people starts to rebound back onto them, and now they're even in more pain. If they're in enough pain, they'll go talk to a mental health professional and start to unpack this and get down to the core of it and find out who they are and have a chance for a new life. I've seen it happen over and over and over again. And I wish that could be on all the national news networks.
Wouldn't that be nice?
Yeah.
Yeah, I know several people who are going through depression right now. Many people that are isolated, and they get very, and I've just in the course of my life, I can think of many who get very stuck in the hurts of the past. And I went through hurts as a child when we lived in Morgan Hill. I had a family. My mother had a lot of anxiety and depression, and our family, we were also the victims of domestic terrorism, where someone threw a tear gas bomb through my bedroom window when I was like 12.
Oh my God.
In the middle of the night, and I was in a bunk bed, the upper bunk, and my younger sister was in the lower bunk, and we were just terrorized by this family who had 10 pit bulls who'd bark all the time. And my mom had all this anxiety and couldn't sleep because of it. It was just all this chaos. And I remember in my 20s, and my mom had left for Mexico, right? So we were kind of abandoned in a way. And I just didn't have a lot of support. And I just remember for the first, into my teens, into my 20s, I think I'd meet someone and I would say, this happened to me and this happened to me. It was like, I wasn't me, I was this thing that happened to me. And it took me a long time to realize like that I was introducing myself as this person that was a victim, but survived from a situation. And then finally it was, oh, I can just put that behind me. That's something that happened to me. That's not me. But it took a lot of years, and I did not have professional help. It just took a lot of years to get through all that layering of hurts, year after year, right? So when I see people that are depressed, I just wonder, and I see that they're stuck. Do you have any advice for what that person can do? And I know it's not divisiveness per se. It's more like they're very isolated because they've lost friends, right? They're kind of in this very separate space in a way, which is unfortunate.
Right. Well, first of all, I'm really sorry that happened to you when you were a little girl. I mean, no matter what age, that's a horrible thing.
Yeah.
And it truly is traumatizing. And it only makes sense. I totally understand why you would introduce yourself with that, because it's painful and we carry that painful energy with us and it hurts to have it. So if we meet someone who we think is nice, we could start to just talk to people about it. That's, it's like a natural inclination to try to get that out of you. So I
Yeah, I
don't
think
blame
it was
you
a
for, yeah,
purging. It was a got to get let go of this somehow,
yeah,
right?
for sure,
Yeah,
for
yeah. Well,
sure.
thank you.
And
Yeah.
yeah, and a lot of people are going through, well, but let me just finish on you a little bit. I really appreciate that you went through that trauma, developed awareness that you are more than your trauma, and then you made a decision to not emulate those neighbors. You were around a whole bunch of energy that was very violent, sociopathic energy. I
Yes.
don't know how it was. I don't know how they're not all in jail or prison for that. And you decided to turn 180 from that and bring good from that, and to look at others and learn about what others might be feeling in their environment, that when they're sad or scared. And then you bring healing energy. Everyone has the power to do that.
Yes.
Yeah.
True.
Yeah. That sounds like a real gift that you were able to come from it. I mean, some children, for example, children who are physically abused and emotionally abused at the same time, um, they can actually become sociopathic themselves. And if we don't get to them by a certain age, it's really hard to undo that and get them to learn how to empathize again. So there is kind of a window when people have been through trauma, but you didn't need that. You found your way out anyway.
I did. And just a small little story about that is that years later, and I was, I think, 17 years old, and I was a waitress. And this happened in Morgan Hill, but I was going to college in San Jose. And I'm in this restaurant, and who comes in? The gentleman that threw the tear gas bomb and his wife. And they sat at my table. And I just remember him being mean and surly, and just you look into his eyes, and
Yeah.
I think I saw some evil there. I really did.
Yeah. Yeah.
And my takeaway was I gave him the best service. I didn't let him know who I was. He never would have known. And I just
Mhm.
remember thinking, wow, you've got to be in some sort of hell to be him. Like,
Yes.
really?
Yeah.
He's the one that has to live with himself, and his wife lives. And then I just felt this empathy for her, especially,
Yeah.
and for him who's trapped
Mhm.
being this person.
Yeah.
So I guess I had a different look at other people young because of those
Mhm.
experiences. And I don't know that,
Mhm.
and I know that experiences in the past, they make us who we are today, and based on how we deal with them, how we
Mhm.
respond to them, right? So for
Yeah.
someone who is depressed,
Yeah.
just back to that, what
Mhm.
what what kind of resources do they have? I'm just thinking about some people that I know right now, like, boy,
Yeah.
if they listen to this, I would just hope that there's something they can do to take some positive steps. And I know one of the things is like writing down 10 things that they're grateful for every morning
Mhm.
and 10 things that they're grateful for every night, right? So
Mhm.
having gratitude. I don't know if there's
Right.
some other techniques or things that you know
Yeah.
of to help people like that.
Sure. Well, there's several layers of depression. Some people can be so far into it that they really pretty much need someone who's a professional to help them out of it. You know, because you can kind of get stuck. It's almost like depression can bury you. You can be buried in like your own negative thoughts and not even have the awareness that you're doing it. So, and therapists are very, very busy the last year. And so I want
Ah,
to assure
mhm.
people that use your medical insurance if you have medical insurance and see if you can get a therapist through because everyone's doing teleconferencing. So there is access. And I want to encourage people to make sure that you interview the therapist. Just because they have letters after their name doesn't mean that's your therapist. And even if everyone else has recommended them, it really needs to be someone that you trust, that you feel listens to you and gets you. So that's that layer. And then a lot of what you do with your group hug, you help people with nutrition. Because when you get off with your nutrition, if you eat too much sugar, drink too much alcohol, you're a bomb ready to go off, right? And I'm sure people have been drinking a lot more this past year. And the thing about drinking uh, when you're sad, like drinking when you're depressed, is it can have a rebound effect and make it even worse the next day when you're not drinking. So being educated on substances, it's better for you to talk to people, to eat and drink healthfully and to exercise. But neurologists are telling us now what they know is not, we're not supposed to exercise just because it's good for cholesterol and our heart. Neurologists would say our brain needs exercise. We need extra oxygen going up there. We need really good blood flow to maintain our bodies and our mental health. So that's
Mhm.
something that everybody should be encouraged to do is to continue exercising. And there are lots of people who don't exercise at all. And when you don't exercise, it's almost like you can feel your blood not even going through your veins very quickly. It just feels that way. So far, we're talked about getting a therapist if you're really far in. Please don't hesitate to do that. It's a very freeing experience to do that. It feels great. Your brain will love it. The second thing is exercise and eating and drinking healthfully. And then also really acknowledging your feelings. I have something, let me see if I have them right here. I'm going to show your people, for people who can see. Sometimes our depression worsens if we're not in touch with our emotions. So I have these things called mixed emotion cards. I'm going to go ahead and plug them. I didn't make them. I'm not getting any money from this. And it'll say a word like, here's receptive. That's a
Hmm.
feeling that we don't get very often. Here's
Mhm.
here's disgusted. And so
Mhm.
people who have their feelings locked inside, they're like in there waiting like for like a volcano to erupt. But if you don't start speaking your feelings, they get stuck. And that leads to anxiety and depression. That leads us to start to have very negative thoughts about ourselves. And we might not have awareness. So I have my clients get these and I say just to go through and put all, and it has really positive feelings here too. It has love. Let's see if I can find it. Like here's respectful. We always like respect.
Oh, very nice.
Yeah.
Two people
Uh,
bowing.
and
Mhm.
here's loving.
Mhm.
So
A woman and a
when we're
child.
home, because we're in
Mhm.
this pandemic and our emotions are all stuck, it's good to look at these cards. The pictures have all been made in a way to help the brain realize what your emotion is. Plus, it's written above the picture too, and it's very cleansing to find emotions. Just to see them laid out on a table in front of you, that cleared out a whole bunch of stuff, and that's really
Interesting.
really helpful for people.
Yes. I've started taking Qigong classes and doing these kind of energy meditations where you do a lot of visualization and visualize releasing. You can release any negativity in the form of smoke, or I like using butterflies because I love butterflies. And so looking at energy as not positive or negative, it just is. And so just letting it kind of release and then bringing in and calling and being receptive to goodness and happiness
Mhm.
and joy in
Yeah.
our heart and things like that. And just to back up a little bit, you mentioned group hug. Just for people who may see this on YouTube or other places, is group hug is a forum on Facebook, and it's private, but so that it's safe for people. Because I have certain rules that you do need to be caring, considerate, kind, supportive, right? And we talk about nutrition and fitness and that kind of thing. So if any of you are interested in that, you are welcome to join that group. I'd be happy to have you do that. So that's group hug, and we do some meditations and things like that, but it's nutrition and fitness. And then Veronica, you also mentioned something about the fitness aspect for emotional health and getting
Mhm.
oxygen to our brain. There was actually in one of my books, I think it was in Smart Fit and Female that I wrote, there was a study done by a gentleman who showed the thermography of people's brains. So when there was adequate blood flow, it was yellows and oranges and reds. And then when there was not as much blood flow, they were some of the cooler colors. So it actually
Mhm.
showed how much blood was oxygenating the brain. It was
Mhm.
interesting. They did this on school children, and these children would sit at their desk for 20 minutes and they would do this scan, and it would be pretty cool colors. And then they would literally walk for 20 minutes and their brains would just light up. Beautiful
Wow.
orange, reds, yellows,
Yeah.
just all this oxygen in their brain. And it's so good for mental health. I totally, being a nutrition and fitness person, totally
Mhm.
believe that. And it's also good for people who want to prevent certain diseases, because then all those nutrients, if you think about it when you're exercising, that blood flow is going to places that it might not, carrying all of those all that
Mhm.
nutrition and antioxidants and
Mhm.
oxygen and things that our bodies need
Mhm.
to be healthy. So that's like another, I'm glad you brought that up, because it is a really important element.
Absolutely. We've learned so much about mental health regarding food that they want marriage and family therapists and licensed clinical social workers and PhDs to all be taking classes on food. And not that we give advice about nutrition, but we can give guidelines, because so many people are eating inappropriately and it's really impacting anxiety and depression in them. It's triggering it.
Yes. In fact, I have a healthy food business. And so I go to some of the stores to stock our product. And I remember right after COVID hit, I was walking down the aisles and all the sugary cereals were gone. All the bacon was gone, all the
Oh
pancakes,
no.
everything that it was like, is this Christmas? I mean, people were eating for comfort. They were not
Yeah.
eating for
Yeah.
their health. And
Yeah.
then I would see my product next to Bob's Red Mill Oats on, just left there untouched.
Oh,
And oh so lonely on
yeah.
those store shelves.
Yeah.
And it's finally starting to normalize a little bit after a year, but yeah, people did start drinking
Mhm.
more. I definitely
Yeah.
saw that in my nutrition coaching, drinking more,
Mhm.
eating the wrong things.
Mhm.
And the alcohol, you were talking about it impacting this next day. It is a depressant. And on top of that, there's been research from the National Institutes of Health that show that it affects our blood sugar up to 4 days later. So we get
Mm.
these blood sugar drops, which make us
Mhm.
also not feel good, right? So
Mhm.
all these things that in your world and my world, that work together, everything that
Mhm.
you're saying, I'm just validating everything that you're saying. It makes just
Mhm.
such perfect sense.
Yeah, I
Right.
definitely have clients coming to me asking for me to help them get off alcohol and marijuana. And
Really?
I'm
Hmm.
not saying I'm a teetotaler or anything like that, but if they're already depressed and we're in a pandemic and they've been using alcohol and marijuana, maybe some people it doesn't have the negative response, but more than not they do, and they could see themselves going down, 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 getting more and more depressed, angry, agitated. So that it's a quick fix, but sometimes it's not even a quick fix, because when people drink, they kind of want to have that woozy, relaxed feeling. It doesn't always happen if you're stressed or anxious or we're in a tragedy right now. The pandemic is a tragedy. So
Hmm.
it's not necessarily the best high you're going to get either.
No, in fact, some people
Yeah.
just start crying when they
Yeah, I
drink.
know. It gets like
I've known some real
horrible.
criers in my life. I'm laughing. It's really not funny, but it just, I
Yeah,
think back to like the behaviors that it can bring out too. So what are
yeah.
like just some top bulleted points, like what people can do to elevate themselves, bring unity,
Hmm.
just some
Uh, well,
pointers.
I think, touching on some of the things that we talked about a little bit, I'd like people to consider being curious about your centered, genuine self. Be curious. What does that mean? Look it up. As I said, it could be higher self, centered self, authentic self, all those keywords you could put in and search on that. Because when we're in our centered self, it's more likely that we're going to feel happier and balanced, and we're going to spread that energy where we go. When we're in our authentic self, it's more likely that when we're in a difficult situation, we're going to be able to read it more carefully without being a victim of a hormonal response or amygdala response of our brain. When we're in our centered self, we on our own will know when it's time to get out and go exercise. I'll tell you a little bit about the centered self. Um, People who maybe have a spirituality, they could say that that's like their highest like soul self. People who don't have a spirituality, which is completely fine, you could just say it's a part of something in their cerebral cortex, part of where we have our reasoning capacity. That's the highest, most genuine you. And sometimes the best way to find your genuine self is to see what it isn't your genuine self. So, for example, how I mentioned the woman who was so angry, that's not her genuine self. That's a defense mechanism. Someone who's chronically a victim, that's not their authentic self. That's someone who's been wounded. And believe it or not, that's a defense mechanism too, because people are so much trying to take care of that part that you're not really developing emotionally and going through phases of maturity. Another part that would be considered not your authentic self is when you meet someone that's like this. Hi, Toni, how are you? I hope everything's going fine with you. I'm doing fine. The world is great. You could just tell that's not their centered self. You don't even really want to engage in conversation with them. The way you and I are speaking with each other right now is our genuine selves.
Mm-hmm.
And you don't need to take any classes to be able to recognize when you're in that self or when you're with someone who's in their centered self. There's there's a respect, there's curiosity,
Mm-hmm.
there's a sense of love and compassion, there's a sense of knowing,
Mm-hmm.
there's a sense of harmony, and there's more likely going to be impulse control. Yeah.
I love the word that you're using. I mean, it's incredible. Curiosity. I mean, what it says that you are open
Mm-hmm.
to accepting, not just tolerating, but embracing
Mm-hmm.
somebody, their ideas, who they are as a person. It's that part of unconditional love. It kind of opens the door to that unconditional love. And I think just being centered, we do, and I'm writing another book right now, but we do I think when we are centered, we are very much in touch with our needs. I have a situation where I remember years ago I had three preteens. I don't know if you remember this, three preteens and a toddler. My little Heather was 2 years old, 3 years old, and two businesses. And I was going off in so many different directions. And I was also, I guess, I think I had her when I was in my late 30s. So I was around 40 or so. And I just remember always just being busy, 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 and really not having time for myself, which a lot of parents can absolutely relate to, working, juggling. And I decided to go away for a few days. And I decided I would go do some, my husband's engineering term, it was more like annual planning, objective setting for the year. So he did that. And I thought that's a really good idea. I think I'm going to go away and take a step back and be able to reflect. And so I packed up healthy groceries. And I remember I brought a bottle of wine and I drove an hour to the beach. And I thought I'm going to give myself a few days. And it was amazing what happened. I found my centered self, and it was
Mm-hmm.
by getting away from the stress, the noise, the distractions, And
Mhm.
I just remember going on walks. Like if we can, not everybody can get away to the beach, but if we
Yeah.
can just like take time for ourselves, just separate a little bit from everything, all the distractions that are going on. And yeah, COVID gives us opportunity for sure to do that.
Mhm.
But this is different, just it. So I basically, I journaled, I read, I dealt with some of those traumatizing issues that I talked about earlier
Mhm.
and was able to release some of those. And I was just like, I walked every day along the beach. It was so grounding. I found myself being very centered, found myself only eating what I wanted to eat, only eating the super healthy foods that I wanted to eat. I remember pouring the wine down the drain, whole bottle down. I had opened it. I'm like, do I want this? I really don't want it. So it was amazing what it did
Mhm.
for that centeredness. And then when I came
Mhm.
back, and I encountered people who were like, "Hey, Toni, how are you? How's it going?" Blah, 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 but really didn't want to go deep. I didn't want any part of that. I just didn't even know how to
Mhm.
communicate with that because
Right.
unless it was a meaningful conversation, it just meant nothing to me. And it
Yeah.
was just I couldn't connect. I wasn't able
Yeah.
to connect like you and I are connecting now. But
Mhm.
it's just an example of how people can actually do that in their lives, even if it's just for an hour or 10 minutes
Mhm.
or just, you
Mhm.
know, coming back to their finding that center. I
Mhm.
had found it and I don't
Mhm.
think I had seen it for a long time,
Yes,
you
that
know?
can happen. It's not easy being a young mom or a young dad. It's not easy
Yeah.
being a kid either, or a preteen. Yeah.
Yes. I think
Yeah.
life on earth isn't really easy for any human.
Yeah, that's quite a challenge. Yeah. One other
Uh-huh.
thing I just wanted to mention real quick about
Yeah.
being in our centered self and curiosity. We can become curious about how to negotiate
Hmm.
because a lot of times I'm seeing people, and we all can stumble into this. Is I like let's talk about politics for a minute. Now I won't go too deep.
Yeah.
Like it's non-negotiable. They're Republican and I'm Democrat, and they're horrible, and the Republicans are saying there's no negotiation. Well, that's how it's portrayed, at least on the news. You know,
Oh,
um, when you get out into the world, you find out a lot of people are getting really tired of the fight, and they do kind of want to be in the sweet spot. But I'd like to encourage people to learn about negotiation and to know that there's power in it, how to work through problems, both being in our centered self rather than hurling insults and listening to a whole list of things that their group just did wrong. It's really
mhm.
interesting to be a good negotiator and find out the strength in it and come into an agreement with people on any issue. The brain loves it. You'll get
Hmm.
an oxytocin release from that too. And I wish we could teach more people about negotiation.
Yeah,
It's
that's
it's a
interesting.
Yeah, it's
Mhm.
a little bit of a craft, but
Hmm.
it's a very pleasing craft, and it's how we get to learn how to move forward as humans.
It sounds very healing. And, perhaps over time, the divisiveness or the groups that do feel separate, whether it's racially or, I mean, I know people that feel separate because of their education. They
Yeah.
went to this great school and there's
Oh,
that kind of separateness with that. They're all, you can look at society and slice it in so many different ways, right?
yeah.
But my hope, my prayer is that this will start kind of overlapping, right? So with that negotiation, there's some overlap and
Mhm.
maybe they're not going to be completely overlap, but enough of an
Yeah,
overlap where there's that respect and that acceptance and
yeah,
that
absolutely.
unity.
Bring back common decency, bring
Hmm.
back respect, honor, humbleness, humility, kindness, patience. All those old-fashioned things are really good for your mental health and really heal the divide.
I love that. That is just wonderful. So I am hoping now that you will help with a guided meditation, just something that can give me and others that will be listening to this a way to just take a few minutes and bring in that sense of calm and that joy and that inclusiveness, the unity. Is that something that you'd be willing to share with
Sure. If
us?
you don't mind me doing something very spontaneous. Yeah,
Spontaneous works for me.
okay, that'll be lovely, actually.
Great.
What I'm going to do is usually when I do this with clients, I close my eyes too. So I might close them, I might have them open. I'm not really sure. But for anyone who's listening, Just know that I'm sending respect to whoever you are, whether you have a spirituality, no spirituality, no matter what your ethnicity or age or whatever. What I'm going to do as I bring you into the state of relaxation is respect you, so you'll be very safe.
That's beautiful.
Um, so if you can, try to get into a comfortable place or chair,
Okay.
and it could be a chair, it could be a bed, preferably where you can rest your head, but I can understand that you might not be able to do that right now.
Mm-hmm.
And there's Toni laying down on the couch. Like, wake up, Toni.
I could just go lay down.
Yeah, just yeah.
I'll sign off now in case I fall asleep, folks. We'll say goodbye
Yes.
now.
And I'll find the off button. Okay.
That's so great.
Okay. So just get relaxed.
Okay.
And let yourself kind of sink into your chair. And a very healing type of breathing is when you breathe in and go ahead and let that tummy get big. We always try to hide our tummies, but it's very healing to breathe in. And when you breathe in, let your tummy really come on out. It brings a lot of oxygen into you. It tells the brain that we're going into relaxation. If anyone out there is afraid of anything or mad at anything, this deep breathing and this relaxation is going to bring you some solace and some peace, and to help you get your energy back. And so just start to slow down your breathing now. Breathe in through your nose if you're not plugged up with allergies, to about the count of 5. And at first your body might not want to do that. Your body might want to fight and breathe fast, and that's okay. But with each new breath, bring in nice and slowly, let your belly fill, and hold it then to about the count of 5. And then after 5, go ahead and slowly release. You can make your mouth make a tiny little O and breathe out like you're breathing through a straw. And you may find that your exhale goes longer than your inhale. So exhale to about the count of 8, but nothing needs to be perfect about this. And as I talk, just become curious, there's that word again, about breathing, that we have the power to change our breathing, and that magical things could happen when we breathe deeply, hold it, and then breathe out slowly. Calms the whole central nervous system. When you breathe deeply, you're breathing in more oxygen that's flooding your blood system. Your blood is bringing that oxygen all over your body, and that extra oxygen is helping you to relax further. And just imagine now that you're in a very safe place with light all around you, and you're breathing in that light, and it's filled with healing energy and purity. And you're breathing that in, and it's swirling all over your body. It knows right where to go to. Any area that's holding fear, any area that's holding disturbing memories, self-doubt, that healing energy is coming in with your breath, going to all those areas, bringing them peace and healing, helping them to release. And imagine a grounding cord is attached to your spine, and it goes all the way down to the center of the earth, helping you feel very secure, very confident, and all the old energy that you no longer need, any hurts, anything that's destructive, fearful, goes right down that grounding cord, right down to the center of the earth. And it feels so good to let go. And before you know it, you're being lifted out of your chair. You're lifting yourself. You're very safe. There's a silver cord attached to you and your body. and you're instantly over a beautiful forest. You can hear the waters of a river. You're in a completely new place, leaving your life behind for a few moments, leaving behind responsibilities, leaving behind worries, and you're in this fresh, crisp forest, beautiful woods, beautiful nature in, around, and through you. And you're finding that you're able to open up yourself and drink the life of this forest into you, breathing in nature, bringing in the clarity of the environment, the harmony, freshness. You hear the sounds of the birds, and every muscle in your body relaxes. The muscles under your eyes, your temple, your jaw. As you breathe in the fresh forest air, your muscles from the top of your head all the way down to your feet are relaxing. Old energy is going down your arms and pouring out the palms of your hands. You're being cleansed there. More old energy is going down your legs and pouring out your feet. And all the energy is being collected and put in a place of respect where it will be purified. And this is your new beginning. This is your safe place. This is your healing time. And a sense of love comes into you and nurturance, as if the nature of the forest wraps itself around you like a blanket. And you're breathing in peace, and you're breathing in healing, and you're breathing in learning how to be in your centered self, giving you new horizons on how you see people, how you see groups, how you think and respond to news events, how you think and respond to friends and family members. A beautiful harmony of peace comes to you, and the ancient wisdom of the forest comes into you, transmuting your energy into this beautiful golden glow. And in this energy, and from your centered self, you see people and groups unifying. You see respect, you see love that's so beautiful to share, empathy, kindness, patience. You see the importance of feelings and listening to the feelings of others, and you feel empowered, and you feel that you have a whole new discernment about life. And the forest gives you this sparkling energy that's going off like stars in, around, and through you. And you're being lifted up. And the silver cord that has you attached to your body is bringing you back slowly. You're surrounded in this bubble of light filled with the stars, because you're bringing this energy with you. You're bringing this healing and this relaxation with you back into your life, back into your soul, back into your relationships. And you come down through your roof, and you come down into your chair or bed, and you walk back into your place where your body is cleansed and waiting for you. And the blanket from the forest still surrounds your heart and your mind and your spirit. And you know that you are one with everything. You are one with love and decency and beautiful energy. When you're ready, take a deep cleansing breath in through your nose. And when you're ready to release, release. You're safe, you're cleansed, you're made new, and you're filled with hope. Take another deep cleansing breath, knowing that you're coming back fully awake, fully at peace, fully in your strong, powerful, beautiful, genuine self. When you're ready, you can open your eyes.
Wow. That was incredible. I didn't want to come back. I love that forest.
I didn't want to bring you back, but I wasn't sure how long the show was going to go. Like 4 hours later. It's like,
Well, that was perfect. That was just so, so wonderful. It just really, the way I feel right now, it just put me in a very pure, I just feel like I'm in a very pure state, very centered and grounded and positive. And I think, I think this is something that I'm going to want to listen into more and more. And I can't wait to share this with everyone. I think everyone's going to get a lot of benefit out of this. So just be sure that you're in a place before this meditation, that you are in a safe place. You're not driving, you're in a place that's quiet, uninterrupted. Close the door, put a sign on the outside, meditation in progress, or deep cleansing in process, or whatever.
Yeah. No hang gliding or anything. Right?
No, nothing crazy. Yeah. So thank you. That was beautiful. And I love the way you really just summed everything up into that one very impromptu, but very moving. I'm a little teary-eyed. Meditation. So thank you so much.
You're so welcome. My spirit respects your spirit, and I'm sending respect to all your listeners and viewers, and healing light and my best wishes.
Thank you. And as I am to everybody, I just want to thank everyone for listening to Toni Talks Humanity Matters and all the goodness that Veronica has shared with us today. And you can find her at vsvitali.com. It's V as in Victor, S as in, well, V as in Veronica, S as in Sam, VITALE.com. I will also have that in the link below. And you can join me at tonijulian.com, where you can listen to all my podcasts, blogs, healthy, nutritional eating, and more. So from our heart to yours, thank you. And until next time, bye-bye.